Okay, for those joining this live stream, I believe this is the 99th one of these live streams of our internal software design reviews. We are continuing here to talk about food. All right, where should we start?
So the one thing that we the last time didn't finish where we wanted to have our own is, what is the right balance between too computery and natural language on how to make the input interpretation for food?
Right. Okay, and you've got a bunch of examples here, which is good.
Bunch of examples and bunch of different possibilities Andrew prepared.
One item, foods. One item is particularly ugly. One serving of, I mean, the word foods there is pretty weird. It's more relevant before you have the one serving of.
There are versions where this is suppressed and downplayed.
Okay. All right. So, oh my gosh. We have versions A through P.
Yes, and not all of them are, a lot of them have a lot of duplicate stuff in them. So I've closed up some sections that where there are duplicates and that sort of thing. But the point is, there's lots of options and we can mix and match with whatever we think is best.
Okay, I'm not keen on this. I don't think we've done this elsewhere, and I'm not keen on this.
Sure. I think
Jeremy, can you speak up on these also?
Yeah, the biggest thing that bothers me is that parent of foods, which in most cases doesn't seem to be needed.
Right. Okay. Foods as footer. It's kind of interesting, but as soon as you've got food type, you kind of know it's a food.
Can't you lead with the food and then paren food type? That's really the parent is the cookie in this case.
Yeah, but apparently that's a food type.
Yeah, but it's like cookie paren food type or something as opposed to food type cookie.
Yeah, there is a version where we use comment instead. I think it's one of the next few. Yeah, in fact, it's the next one. Or, I'm sorry, this is a little bit different. There is another one that has the comment, the food type part there. I think it's the less emphasis on the property one.
This one isn't terrible, I think.
Yeah, you just need to bold that first item, right? The food types should be stronger than those subordinate pieces.
Are you sure?
I think so. Yeah, chicken, way bigger than, well, at least bold compared to fried and leg.
Yeah, bolding is not something that I had taken into account, but yeah, we can definitely do that.
I'm not keen on this. That's interesting. Michael, do you want to comment on this?
No, not really.
Do you like it? Do you not like it?
Android, I looked at many of them.
And your head is now spinning because you looked at too many.
No, I think I like the one that are least computery most, that are most kind of inlined. Which isn't our current style.
I don't think it's going to work. I think that we don't have enough NLG to make that work. Okay. I mean, this isn't terrible. Okay.
This is the comment one that I was referring to.
I'm not buying this. I don't think this works. I think it works in these examples. I think it's really weird. Chicken fried leg.
But could the first item be like, as displayed, but go back to the way we had it before with the others? Just like chicken food type as the parent.
I'm not certain that's going to work in all cases. Well, guys, what happens there? Is it true that that one is really the main event? I have a bad feeling it's not.
I don't think I understand the question.
Well, the question is food type, if you only saw one thing and you saw food type, would it always be sensible? Do you get what I'm saying? Or is there cases where the food type is way too generic? And where a common person just saying, what are you eating? Okay. If the question is, what are you eating? And the answer is, the first thing you say is the food type, then that's one thing. If the first thing you say, if the food type is meat, let's say, it's unlikely you would say that. You would say, I'm eating chicken, sandwich, whatever. Get what I'm saying?
The food type is always a reasonable specific thing.
Okay.
So if you're suggesting getting rid of the food type label, I'd be for that. I think that makes sense because most of the time you should be able to pick out that it is a food type.
Not even saying that. I just that rendering of that first,
No, Jeremy is suggesting that the chicken part is rendered that way, and then it says preparation fried.
Yeah.
Food
Oh,
part.
I see. Yeah. Yeah, I'd be okay with that. I think that sounds like a good idea.
Are you in a position to try it in real time here, or is this too complicated to try to do that? See, no, wait a minute. So, no, this is exactly what I was afraid of. Look at this case here. That's where it falls apart.
But somehow brand name floated to the top. So
yeah, but then you're going to be inconsistent and say, now it's not the food type, now it's the pop tart. I don't think it's a good idea. I think these are
we can reorder these things too.
No. I understand that, but we don't want to do that because we don't want. That's exactly the concern that I had, right? That food type is going to be pastry, right? Which is not useful. You're saying, what are you eating? I'm eating pastry. No, you say I'm eating a Pop-Tart. I hate those things, but that's a different issue. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing here. I mean, this is nice that the brand name comes first.
Yeah.
Someone on our live stream aptly handled corn on the cob asks whether it makes sense for the preparation to come first. Unfortunately not, because these, while in English the preparation might often come first, there's no guarantee that the actual words make sense that way around. Is that a fair statement, Andrew, etc.?
Yeah, the order is a little complicated, yeah.
All right, let's just take a look at this. Okay, that's a different issue. What are we doing this? Yeah. Oh wow, that's a different issue. That's the issue of comparisons, right?
Yes.
Right, and one of the things that I noticed in trying some of this stuff, particularly in the more boxy versions that take up a lot more space, when you get the separator form with the alternatives bar between things, it gets a little difficult to see them because they're always on the right. With this, at least, you can see that the comparison is happening.
Well, we've never used versus anywhere else.
Right, it was more a suggestion and an idea to maybe spark an idea,
Well, Michael, what do you think?
Andrew and I think it's nicely parallel.
Yes. That I agree with. I mean, this plus is...
We first had a plus at the end of the line where you think it's a mistake.
I think if it's going to be a line-breaking thing, it has to be at the beginning of the line, I think.
Yeah.
Isn't that what we do for how do I get a nice let's get some nice pluses. Wow, it's at the end of the line there.
But it's always so in mathematics. We always put it at the end of the line.
It's part of the reason why I wanted to set this up in a column format like this, because it sometimes gets lost. I think you're right that I'd like it to be on the left, but that's not the default behavior.
Okay. Okay. What is this? Total prefix.
So now the properties say total, and then the insides have the usual formatting or something else. So before it would just say calorie content, but now it says total calorie content. It's an idea.
I don't think we need that if the pluses make sense.
Yeah, if we want to do the pluses, then yeah, you want them in the column like that?
I don't know, but I mean, are you saying, what are we doing now? We've got vertical bars right now.
Yes, that's the default behavior.
Even if you say total calorie content.
Then those vertical bars are replaced with pluses, but they would more or less format the same way.
But that's the case right now. So I mean, the question is, I'm a little confused here. Is this, well, many of these are quite ugly.
Again,
yeah, I mean, this isn't working. You're right. This isn't working. For these heavily stacked things, that's just hopeless. Make sense?
Yeah.
Why isn't it the case, instead of a versus, why don't you just leave a space here? Why need anything there?
Yeah, we can do that.
I mean, I don't know. Jeremy, do you have a thought about that?
Well, I was thinking maybe just a horizontal line, right? Separate the box.
Yes, that would be reasonable.
I think that'd be fine. It's clear they're separate at that point because it is a versus case. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so in other words, a very light.
Yeah, just a gray line all the way across connected.
I think I have one further down in the notebook, but it's not connected. It was just an idea I was trying to do stuff with, but we can connect it, I think.
Actually, I think it's better not connected.
Sure, we can do that.
But I mean, Jeremy, something is wrong with this. I mean, it needs more space or something. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely more space, and you have to be careful about looking like division or something, with two items. That's where if it's connected, it's clearly part of that box structure.
Yeah, that's a good
maybe
point.
it would look less busy with it connected. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it'll look better for connected.
Dotted lines, maybe?
I don't know what that would mean. No, I think just like the frame would be the cleanest.
Okay. I don't see what total does for us here.
Well, if we like those bars so much, the idea would be then we would do it for both the comparison and total case or the addition case.
I think the total is useful because, like, if you just would see the right, you wouldn't know if you want to compare or add. There's no indication.
Yeah, I understand. But don't we have currently a form where we are saying if it's blah plus blah? I mean, if it's blah plus blah, it should be written differently and represented differently from the comparison case. And I think a plus is a fine thing. And I think plus in the vertical case, vertical plus is, I think that's quite decent. I don't know. Jeremy, what do you think about that?
For the total case?
Yeah.
I think it looks fine. That means you wouldn't use the word total on the left?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because this is the thing you're talking about, is that
Right.
plus that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I don't think we should probably mix the total and the vertical plus thing.
Yeah, that's too much. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this is a fine solution here. Now, is there anything that we could have here, Jeremy, that isn't a line all across the page, all the way across the page? For example, I don't know, a gray dot or something there, or something to indicate that these are separated items, but without having to have the busyness of a whole extra thing.
I don't think I think a dedicated row is just fine. It added visual space and it separates them.
Could you take this and try and Photoshop it or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
You were hoping to close it up a little bit?
Yeah, relative to this, I think. I don't know, but not too far, because otherwise it's going to get way confusing.
Yeah, I don't think it's that bad, actually.
With that plus just removed.
Wait a minute. What case is this? I thought you said the plus stays for the combined case.
I'm saying the case where the foods are added, the plus stays.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I'm
the
talking about the
comparison
case
case.
Yes.
Okay, I'll compare the two cases then.
Okay, so the next question is, if we believe in this, now the 100 grams of,
I think
does it ever
additional
get
level of
more
boxing
elaborate?
gets just too crowded.
What's that?
An additional level of boxing, the 100 gram eating the right-hand side is just too much. At least for me.
Sorry. Say that again. What?
Like if the 100 gram would generate and spin off a box that would grab the food to the right, I feel like it's getting too crowded.
What are you saying? What box? Which box where?
If the 100 gram would be kind of the left-hand side of a box, that the right-hand side of the box says of what, it's too much. So I like this one much better.
I don't know what was being proposed elsewhere. I mean, are you saying,
I think he's saying instead of using 100 grams of whatever the box structure is on the right, in the past we've tried to do things where we had another box structure that held the quantity and the food in one shot. I don't think it's
that's
book,
That's
but
what I mean.
yeah, it's
so
very
the only possibility which you had someplace here is the amount
in its own little box attached.
Where did you have that?
That's a good question. I think it's amount on top, Jay.
And I rather like this because sometimes the amount one item is kind of an irrelevant thing, but sometimes the amount, I kind of like this. Rather than saying 100 grams of, because sometimes, one item of is very stupid.
For instance?
Well, I mean, it looks silly to say one item of. In other words, one peach, one item of food type peach.
But one watermelon is very irrelevant. Never do you want to know this.
What do you mean?
Like most you are interested in foods in the amount you typically eat. So any foods that are big, you typically don't want that item.
I understand, but a peach you eat in one sitting, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then saying, instead of so normally you'd say one peach, but if you have to say one item of peach, yes, you're right. That sounds.
Do we have to say one item of peach?
In the lower ones, I guess we do.
Well, no, but what does the framework actually support for peaches?
I don't think I know how to answer that question.
Well, is it going to say one item of peach, or is it going to say one peach?
We can make it say one peach. At the moment, the code that I use to make these things, probably not, but it can be done.
I wonder if it can be done consistently.
I think it can. We've had some pretty good luck with this stuff for spoken results things. We have some pretty good data on when to use it and when not. So I'm pretty confident that we can do that.
So what would you imagine putting? Let's say it was the one peach. Where would you put that? I mean, one peach preparation. I don't know what you do to peaches.
Here's an idea. It's a little bit unconventional. So for the website, this very careful distinction between the various qualifiers is actually not so relevant. It's mostly for the language where we have to be precise. So, and Andrew and I discussed the flavor of this. What about when we have the case of one, we kind of fold the one into the food type, even if this isn't quite correct. And kind of depending, even a little bit refined, peach apple, we would write a whole or something like this.
It's not going to work because look at the case of the Pop-Tart. Right? The food type there is pastry. which arguably should be suppressed because it's kind of irrelevant and silly.
Right.
Right. So,
But
whereas
I had one pastry, it's a totally normal thing. At least I use this language.
if you
two
have,
pastries.
do you eat Pop-Tarts?
No, but pastry.
Okay, so I'm essentially certain that somebody would say I had one Pop-Tart, not I had one pastry and it was a Pop-Tart.
I see.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
The problem is that then the other problem is that with these brands, it might be, Green Giant corn or something, right? And the brand is sort of irrelevant in that case. See what I'm saying?
There might be some way to detect the case where in parsing when only the brand name is used. And then we could format that differently, presumably.
You mean when it is possible to use only the brand name, like an Oreo,
Right.
as opposed to cookie or of brand type Oreo?
Yeah, or even Oreo cookie. Yeah, if the user put in Oreo cookie, for example, then we probably wouldn't just say one Oreo in the input interpretation. Perhaps that's an idea.
Okay, so wait a minute. So you're identifying those things which are undebrandable, so to speak, right? So some things like, there are some pretty marginal cases, like, for example, an ice cream bar. Is it a Haagen-Dazs ice cream bar, a Dove ice cream bar? Do you care? See what I'm saying? So, I know that they try to make it, Dove bar is supposed to be a thing. Or in chocolate, for example, have a Cadbury something. They tried to make that a thing, but I think most people would just say a bar of chocolate.
Right, but there are cases like Kit Kat, for example, where people would.
Yeah, well, you would only call it that, and I have no idea what the generic name is.
Yeah, I don't know either. But the point is in those cases that where we parse it using only the brand name, we could do something different so that it would say one Oreo, one Kit Kat.
I know, but I'm giving you the case where I'm sure we can parse one Dove bar. See what I'm saying?
Yes.
To many people, that would be purely a let's see Jeremy's thing here. Why is internal taking forever to connect? Okay, but right. So the issue here is take the Dove bar case. Okay, is it a Dove bar or is it an ice cream? Is it a chocolate? Whatever they are. Is it something that will be named more generically? That's a case where whatever the company might like or not like, people have a common way of talking about it. Whereas, for instance, let's say, what about it's a good example. There are cases where there's a brand name version and then there's a generic.
Right, but I think this would be more on how the user punches it in, so to speak. If the user refers to it as a single thing without the food attached to it, then we would treat it the same way they do. But if you said it in the more generic terms and mentioned the brand,
we also need canonicalization. We have to canonicalize it. It's no good if we look. The point about a Kit Kat, for example, is that in a first approximation, there isn't something directly like that. That if you're going to get a thing like that, it's I don't know, layers of chocolate and whatever they are.
But in the entity world, canonicalization is a different step. You can have the same implicit entity class that you describe differently, and with entity list you canonicalize. You don't immediately canonicalize.
Fair enough. Okay, so what are you guys suggesting? You're suggesting that we try harder to break out something that could be called food. The limiting case is that the whole thing is natural language generated, and it just becomes one fried chicken leg, right?
Yeah, in the ideal case, yeah, and
I'm not sure that is the ideal case. I'm not sure it's the ideal case. That's all well and good when it's as simple as that, but if it gets more complicated, when there's a stack of 7 or 8 of these qualifiers, taking apart the English statement is complicated, and it's actually easier to have it stacked like that and to identify what the elements are. I mean, I don't know how deep these stacks typically get or can get. But, it reminds me of the typical restaurant menu where, it could just be a hamburger and fries, or the restaurant is very, elaborate and has this thing that's 2 lines long describing the wonders of the, free range, grass fed, blah, 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 blah thing. And by the time you've got all those qualifiers of free range, grass fed, whatever, that's a big complicated stack. And reading it off in English is not actually as easy as you might think. Did that make sense?
Yeah, I agree.
And it's actually an advantage to have it in structured form.
Yes.
I mean, I have to say, this does not bother me. Amount, food type, preparation, food part. I mean, this is pretty easy to read. If you think you know what this is, you just read down the right-hand side, chicken fried leg. Okay, fine, I know what that is. But if you're confused, you can look at the left-hand side.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know what this means here. Food type and added food. What does added food mean? Oh, I see.
It's a cookie.
With chocolate chips.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And that can happen all over the place, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the only thing we can count on being able to do is the structured stuff, because that's what we've built. Anything else is kind of a fake.
Agreed.
I mean, we can do it in a bunch of cases for spoken results, but that's, we have to do it carefully, and it is less. So I mean, I guess I'm favoring this kind of stack. Is there a reason why we want to separate out the amount from the other stuff? I personally am not a big fan of the one peach theory, so to speak.
So I know, but what would be your proposal how to deal with it?
Amount, one item, food type, peach. That's it. That's one peach.
Okay.
3 peaches, amount, 3 items.
But that's exactly what's right now on the screen.
I know.
Okay. Okay.
And this.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with that. I'm saying don't try to make it more natural
Smaller.
language generated.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the Pop-Tart case would be the same way.
Where is the pop?
Or the Pop-Tart case would probably be like that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Amount, brand name, food type.
Okay.
I mean, I think the case that is a little bit trickier, which you maybe should show, is something which is a generic, but we have the branded version of the generic. Am I making sense?
I think so, but I think it's okay because we use the order in which things were parsed. So if you said, I think if you said 2 Pop-Tart pastries, I think it would still show up. Well, it may come up as
okay, but look,
Pop-Tarts.
if what you do, and this will be mostly chosen from input interpretation, if you say, and I'm no expert on foods that you buy in grocery stores, but I think there's a like like peas or something, right? Frozen peas. I think like green giant frozen peas or Bird's Eye. Does that exist, or is that a British brand that went out of business 50 years ago? I have no idea. But Bird's Eye peas or something versus green giant peas, right? It is actually not that important to most users which brand those are.
Right. And then I think the current state of how it works would be the opposite order you see here, because Pop-Tarts was used. Instead, it would be amount, whatever, food type, whatever, brand, whatever.
Okay, fine.
I think it's that order. And I think that's what you want, right?
Yeah, it's exactly what one wants.
Yep.
That's just
Okay.
fine.
Yep.
Okay. So now, next question. Should it be gray, left-hand side, and so on like this? Or should it be like one of your white versions? Where's the white version? Where's the version where it's named but less emphasis on property? Is that the one?
I think so. Yeah, that's the one without the gray.
Jeremy, do you have an opinion here?
I kind of like this version. Yeah.
Me too.
Maybe even just slightly lighter on the left, but yeah, definitely.
I think that's what you're doing here.
Yeah, just from here, it's fairly low contrast between the two.
Okay, you're suggesting more contrast.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Fair enough. Okay.
I added the link too for maybe separating out the amount.
Where?
In chat. In chat. Yeah, there's a new link.
But let's take a look at this example that you've done here. Okay. Well, this is going to look a heck of a lot better without those 100-gram things hanging off the left.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we need to look at what it looks like if you just have a plus without, between those things. Okay, you've got a new idea here.
Especially in those stacks, it's nice to separate out the amount.
I do agree.
Yeah,
it's of a different type than the others.
Yeah, that's nice. I agree.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, let's see what it looks like with tall stacks with pluses vertically. I think it's not going to look good.
Okay, I have another idea. So we decided that we don't want the total when we sum it up. What about the reverse? If we want to compare, we say comparison somehow in the left. That makes it totally clear.
Well, but then what's on the right? I mean, how do you have the multiple things on the right?
In some flavor, as Jeremy showed with some kind of dividers. It doesn't matter anymore because it's obvious there's something to be compared.
I think I have an example of that if you scroll further in the notebook. I don't remember which letter or anything, but I do have a variant similar to that. I think it has like a column header. It's under the new attempts for certain.
Food type is header?
No, that's not quite it. I'll take a look in my copy. It's case P. Should be the last one in that.
It's good you didn't run out of letters of the alphabet in different cases.
Yes, I knew I was getting close to the end.
Okay. Ugh, I don't like this.
I was thinking down the left.
Like we could move it on the left, but the idea is the same here, I think.
Yeah. Sugar content comparison.
Exactly.
Or compare sugar content, maybe. Yeah. Would that be better?
I don't like any of them because it's so different from what we're doing elsewhere.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so listen, the main problem is indicating things. And Jeremy, I was not a huge fan. I mean, maybe you could take something more like these stacks that we have and without the gray and so on, if you can get one of those.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a huge fan of this thing that's going to end up being hugely, tall vertically on the page. Of these different elements that we're combining, and then we've got this giant blob of gray on the left spanning that whole region. It's kind of weird. I mean, go ahead.
I also don't like it visually, but it makes it very clear that it spans.
Fine. Okay. My question. Okay, the question is, if we are adding the things together, what's the way to indicate that? So I'm not a huge fan of the separator lines, but I also don't think the pluses are going to work at all. When and also I want to know what happens if there are multiple boxes which have different widths. Are they left aligned? Are they right? Are they centered? What's happening to them?
I think in any examples that I've done, I've centered them, but we could left align them or right align them.
Well, by center, do you mean you align them on the separator line, which is probably what should happen if we're going to do that?
Yeah, I didn't get into that kind of detail in the code I wrote to do this stuff, but I think that's possible. I don't know off the top of my head.
It could potentially leave a lot of empty space in this boxed area on the right.
I wouldn't worry too much because often the things that you would compare or add, you would have approximately the same specification.
Yeah, I don't see too many things that are much longer than like what you see towards the top of your screen now with Granny Smith. Okay. I think really you get a handful of words, but probably no more than 4 most of the time. So I don't think things will get too...
Okay. What about the possibility of actually running them sequentially with line breaking effectively. I mean, these things aren't working, but I think it's going to work a lot better when they're more integrated like this. Can we try that?
Okay, I think you can look at towards the top of the notebook. One of the later attempts sort of emulates that. I think it's the current behavior in B. I think is closer to what you're asking for. I think obviously they're not in boxes; they're in their own little strings with parentheses after them. But that's closer to what I think you're suggesting, right?
Yeah, but it's not as vertical. These are very horizontal.
Right? Is that what you were?
No, I was saying take things like this, okay, and have them be like elements in running text. So blah plus blah plus blah.
Oh, so I chain them with row more or less.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah, that could work. The downside is that I think you'd run into cases like what you have there on your screen now, where the vertical bar is on the right. So like in that protein two Pop-Tarts.
I get it. I'm not sure. Yeah, but it doesn't help that there's so little vertical space here.
That I don't know how to control, but yeah, we could.
There's certainly a way to do that. But
yeah.
Okay, so I think the choices are it's like row-like behavior with pluses in between, or something like vertical bars, and the vertical bars could span vertically, which would certainly help. Or everything is in a vertical stack. Those seem to me to be the obvious choices. I think with respect to what's happening with these boxes, I think we're more or less straight on that.
There's also the case where we have what you have seen, the chocolate chip cookie. So where they have chocolate chip or without raisins, cookies without raisins. Would we?
Well, so what does that look like?
It's not really covered in the case you have it currently.
Okay, so can we see what it looks like? I mean, so are you saying that there's a without case or something?
Could be, yes.
It's possible to do in entity value at the moment. We haven't really.
How do we format it?
That's a question that still has to be open, which we haven't really looked into too much yet.
See, at the moment,
wait a second. So this is an exclusion of something in the food. Is that correct?
Yes.
It's something without something.
Right.
So this is a cookie. Why shouldn't this be called additions rather than added food? I mean, it might not be a food. It's a chocolate chip, which is hardly what one would call. I mean, why don't we just say
whatever you eat is a food?
Fine. So you don't. So it's kind of redundant to say that here. Well, couldn't it just be called addition?
I mean, I guess we can, yeah.
Or additions.
Edit, I feel like it's better.
Added.
Well, I find addition strange here, the word addition.
Well, it is, and what is being said there is an addition. Chocolate chip. Of course, it's generically chocolate chips, plural, because there's not just one chocolate chip in the cookie, one hopes.
But what I mean is, it's not you have one food and you put another food on top. That I would call addition. That's kind of baked in.
Quite literally.
With?
Yeah, with is certainly an obvious thing.
Yeah, with seems okay. The thing I worry about is if you look at the left-hand column, then with doesn't really fit in.
Yes.
Like food type makes sense, preparation makes sense. Yeah. With seems like a strange word to use there. But I agree, it could be.
Well, it needs to be a noun, which is why I suggested addition.
Right.
But addition probably isn't right.
Another idea that we could do is in the added foods case, instead of making it a separate row, we could have cookie with being in gray, and then after that have chocolate chip to the right of it. So it would be food.
That makes sense. I mean, yeah, I understand what you're saying. It might be, but is that a reasonable thing to do in general?
I don't know. It was just an idea. I was just
but I mean, so we have to inventory what possible added food there is there.
It could be any food.
So I mean, it could be a cookie with bananas.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
then I think it's better to stack it.
Okay.
What the heck can we call that, though?
Ingredient? It's not quite technically
It's not
correct.
an ingredient.
Yeah, it's I say.
I almost want to say additive, but that means completely different thing.
Contains, but contains is not really
Noun.
the noun.
Corn on the Cob on the live stream is asking what does the industry use for these things? Andrew, but is there an industry name for such a thing?
I don't think so. Micah, you're a little more close with this stuff than I am.
Yeah, not that I know of. I mean, this sort of has to do with how we're organizing the data. I mean,
Right, but the point is that an additive, people know what a food additive is, and
right.
it's
That's
not
the
usually a good thing.
law, right, right.
It's almost like an extra ingredient. But
Or
that's
variety, but that's not quite.
Yeah. Look, I mean, the problem is it can't just be, a preposition like with blah, blah, blah. It should be a noun. For now, let's say added food. Added element, I mean, it's pretty weird. Element sounds very scientific, and it's, an added element of a chocolate chip is really weird. Added element of whipped cream. See, added food, whipped cream is going to be really bad to read as well.
Supplement?
I'm not sure. What's that?
Supplement?
No, that's like taking your, vitamin D, fortified cereal or something.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Okay, added food for now. Let's try to solve.
So what was the case where we have no without raisins?
Yeah, we're talking about the without raisins case.
then you could have
Absent
remove.
food.
Yeah, it could be removed.
Absent food. I mean, it's like, okay, listen. Look, clearly with and without would work.
If added is there, then absent is not far away.
I'm agreeing, but I think they're both kind of cruddy. So let's try the possibility of with.
Yeah, I like that.
And then
I
we
think-
can
I
use
think you
without
can
for the absent case.
Right. I think the with, although it is a little bit different in that column, I think it's still clear what that means.
Let's
I
try
mean,
it.
maybe the with could be a little bit grayer.
Less gray, you mean? Because if it says without, it's really important that it's the
Yes,
without.
I mean less. Yes, I do mean
Right,
less.
blacker.
Yeah.
Right. No, that makes sense. Let's try that. Okay, so the remaining thing we have to solve in the no time we have available is what to do with multiple elements here and whether to put the pluses. Jeremy, did you mock anything up by any chance?
Yeah, you could go back to my design folder. You could do food compare to. You click that first link.
Okay. Just a 2 right at the end?
Yeah. You'd have to do some calculation on pod width to figure out how to make this work. In that comparison case with you basically have a grid but you have to parse what the layout's going to be.
Sounds complicated, but I guess it could be done.
I think that's not that
I
complicated.
don't like it for the following reasons. Like the lowest one, it is not clear to me if you compare 3 or if you compare the sum of the first 2 with the third.
Yeah.
It's also a little weird without the pluses hanging at the beginning of the line here. What does it look like if they're stacked vertically? I think the plus in a vertical stack is going to look really weird. Comments?
It
The
could be
beginning?
replaced by a small gray end.
I don't think that's going to help. I mean, then we got to have a similar thing for the other case. How would you feel about this case if there weren't any separator lines here? I mean, also, this is a somewhat exceptional case because these are the same height.
Yeah.
One idea would be to force all of the pluses on the left side and do it in this way. So if you know that it's going to span the width, so maybe the top two, and like in the second case, you could have one box plus another immediately to its right. And then basically the example that's there, take the plus sign, move it on to the left of the line below, and then have it that way. So it would stretch across, but the pluses would always be forced on the left
I'm skeptical.
whenever there's a new line.
I'm skeptical. I think these cases, okay, so look, what I think we need to do is you should generate some cases where there are random different heights and so on here. Okay, heights and widths.
Sure.
And humph. I just think it's going to get incredibly tall if we stack them completely.
We should also not over-engineer in the sense of this very highly qualified foods and then multiple comparisons of them is a rare event in the query streams.
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, so are you arguing that we should just try and stack them?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yes, it's not pretty, but in these rare cases, it's clear. And okay, you have to scroll one time more on your phone.
Someone on a live stream is saying this browser window is only half on screen, cut off right now. I don't think so. That's a problem for the folks worrying about the live streaming technology. It shouldn't be. Something is wrong. Okay. So, okay, again, last thing, the plus, where does it go? Maybe the plus is gray and centered on the line here.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I like this.
What's that?
I like this.
Okay, but that means it's going to outdent. Some of these things are going to outdent.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Do we think we have a solution here? Seems like it.
I would call it a pre-solution, but we have one step further.
Okay, fine. All right. Well, so Andrew will go off and implement this. Then we'll take a look at a bunch of examples.
Yep, that's good.
And hope for the best. Okay. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And thanks to folks on the live stream. We will be back in about an hour for a meeting about geometry and the definition of angles. Okay. See you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.